You swipe. She responds. You schedule drinks. She confirms, then cancels 2 hours before with, "Something came up." You reschedule. She agrees, then goes silent. You match her energy, pull back, and suddenly she's back, asking when you're free. It's interesting. It's not. It's the attention economy testing, whether you'll stay available while she keeps her options open. Herbert Marcuse spent decades studying how consumer capitalism doesn't satisfy desire. It manages it. The market doesn't want you fulfilled. It wants you to browse. Dating apps didn't invent this. They just made it visible. When choice becomes infinite, commitment becomes irrational. When scarcity disappears, so does value. And you're not competing for her attention. You're competing with the idea that someone better is one swipe away. This isn't about women. It's about what happens when desire meets endless supply. Marcuse wrote about a one-dimensional man, the person who mistakes consumption for freedom. He studied post-war Western societies in which people had more choices than ever, but felt less alive. The system didn't oppress through scarcity. It was oppressed through abundance. You could buy anything, date anyone, become whoever the algorithm suggested, but none of it required you to choose who you actually were. Marcuse called it repressive desublimation. Desire used to build toward something: marriage, mastery, a life you carved out. Now it's discharged instantly and continuously, and you're back to scrolling within minutes. The release doesn't resolve the tension. It just keeps you in the loop. Dating apps are the purest expression of this. You're not looking for a person. You're looking for the feeling of looking. The variable reward schedule, sometimes she responds, sometimes she doesn't, keeps you engaged longer than certainty ever could. Marcuse understood that the most efficient cage is the one that feels like freedom. You think you're exercising choice. You're exercising compliance. The boundaries you fail to set, the calendar she controls, the attention you give for free. These aren't accidents. They're the rules you live by. And the system rewards her for keeping you uncertain, because uncertainty keeps you available. Masculine sovereignty begins when you stop mistaking options for autonomy. You don't need more matches. You need standards that eliminate 90% of them. She reschedules. You accommodate. She responds when she feels like it. You match her timing. She keeps you in rotation while she evaluates better options. And you tell yourself, you're being patient. You're not patient. You're a placeholder. Marcuse called this the abolition of negative thinking. In a consumer system, you're not allowed to reject the premise. You're only allowed to choose between the products the system offers. You don't ask whether endless dating is making you sharper. You ask which app has better algorithms. You don't question whether her behavior reflects interest. You question whether you're texting correctly. The trap isn't her, it's the frame. You're operating inside a market that's designed to keep you comparing, optimizing, and never choosing. Because the moment you choose, you leave the market. And the market needs you to browse. She's not withholding to test your confidence. She's withholding because the attention economy rewards scarcity. The girl who's always available has low value. The girl who's selectively unavailable has leverage. And you've been taught to interpret her calendar games as interest, her delayed responses as mystery, her cancellations as opportunities to prove yourself. You mistake the simulation of desire for desire itself. Marcuse saw this in advertising, where products are marketed not for what they do, but for what they symbolize. You don't buy the car. You buy the identity of someone who drives that car. You don't date her. You date the idea that landing her proves your high value. And she knows it, which is why she'll keep you uncertain just long enough to extract attention, validation, and the feeling of being chosen without ever actually choosing you. You're the backup plan with main character delusions. You're not the victim here. You're the volunteer. Every time you reschedule after she cancels, you're signaling that her time is more valuable than yours. Every time you wait 3 days for a response and act like it's normal, you're teaching her that your attention is free to give. Every time you tolerate behavior you'd never accept from a man, you're confirming that attraction overrides standards. And she's watching. Marcuse argued that the system survives by making you complicit in your own subjugation. You're not forced to swipe. You choose to. You're not forced to wait. You tolerate it. You're not forced to ignore the disrespect. You rationalize it. The cage works because you believe you're free. Dating apps sell you the illusion of abundance while training you to accept the scarcity of respect. You have infinite options and zero leverage because leverage requires the willingness to walk. And you won't walk. You'll wait. You'll rationalize. You'll tell yourself she's busy, she's interested, she's just bad at texting. Meanwhile, she's managing a roster, and you're audition number 3. The masculine error is thinking patience equals strength. Patience without standards is just tolerance for disrespect. And the moment you tolerate disrespect, you've lost the only thing that makes you valuable: scarcity. You're abundant. You're available. You're eager. And in the attention economy, eagerness is the fastest way to signal you have no better options. Marcuse would tell you, the problem isn't her behavior, it's your inability to say no. Here's the paradox. The traits that attract her are the same traits that disappear the moment you commit. She's drawn to the man who's scarce, indifferent, outcome independent, busy with a life she's not the center of. The moment you make her the center, she loses interest. Not because she's cruel, because desire requires distance. Marcuse studied how consumer capitalism creates artificial scarcity to maintain demand. Luxury brands limit supply. Nightclubs have velvet ropes. Dating apps throttle matches. Scarcity signals value. Abundance signals disposability. And the moment you become abundant, always available, always responsive, always accommodating, you've turned yourself into a commodity. She doesn't want the guy who's always free. She wants the guy whose calendar she has to work around. She doesn't want the guy who texts back immediately. She wants the guy who makes her wonder when he'll respond. She doesn't want the guy who's grateful for her attention. She wants the guy who's evaluating whether she's worth his. But the moment you internalize this and play scarcity, you're still playing her game. Real scarcity isn't a tactic. It's the natural byproduct of a life so demanding that she's lucky to be part of it. Marcuse argued that the system absorbs resistance by turning it into performance. You think you're rejecting consumer logic by playing hard to get. You're not. You're just marketing yourself better. The absolute rejection is building a life where her presence or absence doesn't move the needle. Where you're not performing indifference, you're living a priority. You enforce standards. She disappears. You walk away from disrespect. You lose access to the rotation. You choose solitude over tolerating bad behavior. And for a while, it feels like punishment. Marcuse called this the great refusal, the willingness to reject the entire framework, even when rejection means isolation. Most men won't do it. They'll compromise. They'll rationalize her cancellations as busy schedules, her disrespect as miscommunication, and her lack of effort as something they can fix with better games. They'll stay in the market because leaving the market means admitting they might not find better. And the fear of ending up alone overpowers the reality that they're already alone, just with an audience. You think having options means you're winning, but if none of those options respect you, you're not winning, you're just busy. The descent requires accepting that most women in the attention economy aren't looking for commitment, they're looking for validation. And if you're willing to provide it for free, they'll take it. But the moment you require reciprocity, effort, respect, and consistency, you'll lose 90% of them. And that's the filter. The men who can't afford to lose 90% stay in the game and tolerate the disrespect. The men who can afford it walk, and the women who are actually interested follow. Not because you played hard to get, because you made it clear you don't need her more than she needs you. Marcuse would tell you the system survives by making rejection feel like failure. It's not. It's sovereignty. You stop rescheduling. She cancels you and doesn't offer a backup plan. She goes silent for 3 days before you move on. She tries to re-engage weeks late. You're indifferent, maybe curious, never eager. This isn't a tactic. It's a filter. Marcuse believed freedom begins when you stop internalizing the system's logic. You don't need to outsmart the attention economy. You need to stop playing. Masculine sovereignty means your time, attention, and presence are scarce by default, not because you're performing, but because you're genuinely allocated elsewhere. She's not on the mission. She's a potential companion to someone on a mission. And if she doesn't understand the difference, she's disqualified. The path requires 3 stances. First, you build a life so demanding that dating is a sidebar, not the plot. Your calendar is packed. Your attention is expensive. Your standards are visible in how you spend your time. Second, you stop interpreting interest through responsiveness. Words are cheap. Effort is the only signal that matters. If she's not making it easy for you to see her, she's not interested. She's keeping you warm. Third, you enforce consequences immediately. She reschedules without proposing an alternative. She's consistently late, and she's out. She's on her phone during dinner when you leave. Not because you're petty, because behavior that's tolerated becomes behavior that's expected. And the moment you tolerate disrespect, you've taught her you don't respect yourself. Marcuse argued that absolute autonomy requires the courage to refuse the options the system offers. You're not choosing between her and someone better. You're choosing between tolerating disrespect and walking away. And most men won't walk because they've tied their self-worth to whether she stays. You don't need her to stay. You need to have standards she either meets or doesn't. She's not the enemy. She's responding to the incentives the system created. When scarcity is gone, value becomes invisible. When effort is optional, respect becomes negotiable. When commitment costs more than it rewards, why would anyone choose it? Marcuse believed the system didn't need to force compliance. It just needed to make alternatives unimaginable. She's been taught that keeping options open is smart, that delaying commitment is strategic, that attention is currency, and she should maximize yield. And she's right within that frame. But you're allowed to reject the frame. You don't fix her. You select for women who already operate outside it. They exist. They're rare. They're the ones who propose plans, show up on time, and don't treat your attention like a limitless resource. They're not better than other women. They have different rules. And they're looking for men who have rules too, not preferences, not flexible boundaries that bend when she's attractive enough. Rules. The reframe isn't women are the problem. It's most people, men and women, are operating inside a system that rewards shallow engagement and punishes depth. And your job isn't to judge them. It's to filter for the exceptions, to build a life so clear in its standards that the women who don't meet them self-select out. And the ones who do meet them don't need to be convinced. They recognize what you're building and want to be part of it. Marcuse would tell you, the system doesn't collapse because you fight it. It collapses because you stop participating. You don't need more options. You need ruthless selection. You don't need a better game. You need a life that makes games irrelevant. You don't need to understand women. You need to understand leverage. And leverage begins the moment you're willing to lose her. Not as a bluff, as a default. Marcuse believed the one-dimensional man was dangerous, not because he was oppressed, but because he'd forgotten he was. He mistook the menu for freedom. He mistook access for power. He mistook participation for choice. You're not free because you can swipe on 1,000 women. You're free when you can walk away from all of them and feel nothing. That's not nihilism. It's sovereignty. The high ideal is this. You build a life so demanding, so aligned, so non-negotiable that her presence is a bonus, not a requirement. You date from overflow, not from lack. You filter for effort, not potential. You enforce consequences, not second chances. And you do it calmly, without anger, without explanation, because men who have standards don't defend them, they live them. This is the work, not a texting strategy, not approach tactics, not learning to read signals. The work is becoming the kind of man who doesn't need to read signals because the women in his life make their interest obvious. The work is building a life where solitude is peaceful, not desperate, where her cancellation doesn't ruin your week because your week was already whole, where her disrespect meets indifference because you've seen better and you'll see better again. Marcuse spent his life warning that comfort is the most effective prison. You're comfortable in the rotation. You're comfortable with the games. You're comfortable mistaking activity for progress. And comfort is why you'll stay stuck. Walk away from women who waste your time. Build a life they'd be lucky to enter. Enforce the rules you live by.